I'm Wade, 26, and last week my mom tried to call my business a family asset, one too many times, so I changed the locks on the BMW and sent her an invoice. I wasn't supposed to be at Grandpa's that day. Not really. I was just dropping off ornament samples for his friend Millie, the one with the dog that only barks at political ads. I had glitter in my eyebrows and sample boxes stacked on my passenger seat like bricks. So when I arrived in a taxi, still sweating from hauling everything up the porch steps, I wasn't expecting the interrogation. "Buddy," Grandpa said, warm and surprised. "Why'd you come by taxi? What happened to the BMW we gave you for your 21st? Before I could answer, my mom cut in from the dining room doorway like she was landing a punchline on late-night TV. "That car belongs to his sister now," she said brightly. The air changed. You know the way a room does when you realize the thermostat isn't broken. Someone just opened a window during a blizzard? That's what it felt like. Uncle Mike stopped chewing. Even the foyer clock seemed to clear its throat. Grandpa tilted his head like a man watching a magician fumble the trick. "Belongs to who?" he asked. And then quieter. "To Bree?" My mother nodded, then launched into her favorite soliloquy. "You know how hard she works. And Wade hardly drives. He just paints little balls." She laughed like it was charming, like those little balls weren't what paid for her mortgage last month. I stood there, knee-deep in cardboard and humiliation, trying to find a polite way to say, "Are you kidding me?" Bree, 22, front of house to my back in business, poked her head out from the hallway. She had a ring-light reflection in her eyes and a smoothie with a straw so thick it looked like she was drinking a tennis ball. "It's just logistics," she chirped. "I have meetings." Meetings. My workshop is 220 square feet of lacquer fumes and elbow grease, and I've taken 2 a.m. Ubers just to make morning markets on time. But sure, let's talk about logistics. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. That's not his way. He just set down his napkin like it was paperwork, turned to me with that contractor voice he uses when someone misquotes drywall, and said, "When did the car start belonging to your sister?" I wanted to say something brave. Something with teeth. Instead, I said, "I don't know. It just happened. Because that's how it always goes in my family. Wade handles it. Wade pays it. Wade lets it slide. I am the fixer." The calm voice. The one who says, "Sure, I can cover that." Even when I'm eating cold pizza in a freezing garage because I forgot to pay my own heating bill. I started Wade Works ornaments with $20 and a temperamental airbrush. That BMW? Grandpa bought it for me when I was finally earning enough to buy a sign for my booth. "A craftsman needs reliable wheels," he'd said. And it was perfect, solid brakes, good trunk, nothing flashy. Then Bree needed a ride to a brand collab. Then she needed the car. Just for the weekend. Then somehow, she had the keys, the registration, and was posting mirror selfies from the front seat like it was gifted by Hermes, not my grandfather. Every time I said something, it was met with a group shrug. "You hardly drive," Mom would say. "Bree has meetings." Now Grandpa was staring at me with those kind contractor eyes, the ones that don't miss a single nail out of place. "Come sit," he said. "Let's talk." I sat. I pressed my thumb into the edge of the sample box until it bit skin, trying to hold in what I really wanted to say. That car was mine. That business was mine. That enough was finally enough. But all I said was, "I think I need some help drawing a line." Grandpa smiled like I just passed a test he'd been waiting for me to take. "Good," he said. "Because I've got a pad and pen inside." We sat at Grandpa's old laminate kitchen table, the one with the peeling corner he refuses to fix because a man should live with some imperfection. He had a yellow legal pad in front of him, a black rollerball pen, and that same calm energy he used when I was 9 and crashed his riding mower into a rhododendron. He didn't scold. He taught. Slowly. With snacks. Now, he uncapped the pen like a surgeon prepping for something delicate. "Let's start simple," he said. "What have you paid for?" I opened my laptop and pulled up a spreadsheet I'd started keeping the night after I found $119 in influencer ads charged to my business debit card, the one Bree was supposed to be using only for shared content strategy. Turns out that was code for, "Let me grow my personal brand while you foot the bill." I walked Grandpa through the numbers. $1,800 for the mortgage that month. Mom said Dad was waiting on a contractor payout. $700 over 3 months in. Brand push packages. Through a marketing firm Bree. Found on TikTok. $249 for promoted posts. $132 in gas. $260 for inventory Bree gave away for engagement gifts. $300 for Thanksgiving catering I apparently agreed to by being in the family chat. And the car. My car. Gone. Grandpa didn't interrupt. He made a quiet tick mark every time I passed another $100. By the time I finished, his sheet looked like a contractor's fence quote. Son, he said, leaning back, you've been subsidizing their lifestyle while they call it family loyalty. That's not equity. That's extraction. I swallowed hard. I think some part of me still wanted someone to say I was overreacting. You're not being selfish, he said, reading my mind. You're being used. The word landed like a dropped wrench. I nodded once. What do I do? Grandpa tapped the table. You set a boundary. You draw it clean. And then you enforce it like it's a contract, because it is. That night, I changed every password. I ordered a new Square reader, delinked every shared login, and wrote a single message in the family chat. Here is a breakdown of what I've paid on behalf of the household and business since January. Total, $8,742. 19. I am no longer available to fund family expenses. I will not split profits. I will not provide inventory. The BMW is a business asset and must be returned by Friday at 5 p.m., or I'll report it as unauthorized use. This is not a request. It is a boundary. Mom replied. Wow. Threats now? To your own mother? Bree. Over a car? Grow up. Dad. Let's calm down. I didn't reply. I printed a laminated sign for my booth. Custom ornaments, cash, card, or Venmo. Family discount suspended. Taping that last line stung like lemon in a paper cut. But I did it. And when Friday came, and the BMW still hadn't appeared, I clicked Report Vehicle Misuse on my insurer's site. At 7:11 p.m., headlights swung into the shop lot. Bree stepped out, tossed me the keys like they were chewing gum, and wouldn't look me in the eye. There's a scratch on the door, I said. She shrugged. Then bill me. She called an Uber and left. No hug. No apology. Just silence and taillights. I stood there, keys in hand, heart hammering. Then my phone buzzed. Grandpa. Proud of you. Come by tomorrow. We've got work to do. Grandpa was waiting with a clipboard and 2 mugs of terrible coffee when I got to his house the next morning. His kind of coffee should come with a health warning, thick, metallic, somehow both burnt and raw. But he poured it like it was holy. We're doing inventory, he said, sliding the clipboard toward me. Of what? I asked, still bleary. Of your life, he said. Let's see what's actually yours. He meant it literally. Over the next 2 hours, we wrote it all out. The workshop lease. The tools I'd bought with my own savings. My inventory. My client list. The Etsy shop. The payment processor. The vanishing balances from family marketing funds. The BMW. Ownership's not a vibe, Grandpa said. It's a paper trail. And then came the part one wasn't ready for, the trust. He pulled a manila folder out of a drawer, the kind with little metal tabs and a decades-old bank's logo on the flap. I started this when you were 19, he said. Just a little egg for later. Originally, it was for family emergencies. But watching how your emergencies become everyone else's lifestyle. He tapped the folder. It's yours now. Strict use, business expenses only. Lease a better shop. Hire help. Grow the thing you built. I stared at it like he'd handed me a winning lottery ticket and a map to my own spine. You're serious? I asked. He grunted. Do I look like the kind of man who jokes with legal documents? I opened the folder. There it was, the numbers, the stipulations, the way out. Later that day, I signed a short lease on a new space, corner unit, big windows, enough room for a second workbench. I moved my supplies with help from my neighbor, a night shift nurse who refuses to take cash, so I gave her a Best Neighbor 2025 ornament instead. I rebranded. Printed signs. Taped a new one to the door. Wade Works, small shop, steady hands. The next market, Grandpa showed up in a wool coat older than my car and bought 6 ornaments he didn't need. Then he pulled up a stool and sat behind the table like a co-pilot. You didn't raise your voice, he said once between customers. You raised your standard. And then I sold out of all the dog ornaments before noon. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed like a wasp nest. Mom, you humiliated us with that invoice. Bree, hope you're happy. I missed a campaign meeting. Dad, can't we move past this? I didn't answer. I painted tiny bones with names in silver cursive and handed them to people who actually smiled. Then Dad showed up. At the booth. Hands in jacket pockets like he wasn't sure they were allowed out. He didn't say hi. Just nodded at Grandpa, looked at me, and mumbled, Your mother's upset. I wiped my hands on a rag. I know about the money. Dad looked uncomfortable. I didn't know how much. I won't discuss it without Grandpa, I said. My voice was steady. Dad nodded and walked off like he'd wandered into the wrong waiting room. It was the midpoint. The moment everything tilted. Because I didn't flinch. Because Grandpa didn't budge. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the one fixing things. I was just the one finally telling the truth. Sunday morning, Grandpa called for a family coffee. That's all it took. No debate, no argument. When Grandpa says, Come to the table, you come. Even Mom, who hadn't made coffee without foamed milk since 2016, showed up with a tray of gas station danishes and a look that said, I'm the victim here. Bree wore a hoodie that probably cost more than my rent and carried herself like she was on her way to a board meeting, not an accountability session. Dad stayed behind Mom like her human neck pillow. Grandpa had 2 folders laid out on the table, my spreadsheet in one, a slim stack of legal-looking documents in the other. He opened with no ceremony. Let's talk numbers, he said. Mom jumped in immediately. Dad, Wade is making this into a thing. Bree just needed support. He's punishing her for. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He just lifted his hand. We will start with facts. He turned to the spreadsheet. Wade has transferred just under $9,000 to this household in the past year. He's also paid nearly $2,000 in unauthorized business charges. He lost the use of a vehicle gifted to support his work. That's what's on paper. He turned to Bree. That's not equity. That's theft by use. Bree blinked like the word had slapped her. Mom laughed brittle. Don't throw around legal words, Dad. This is family. Exactly, Grandpa said. And family should be the last place you encounter theft. The room got quiet. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Dad stared at a tile on the floor like it owed him an apology. Then Grandpa turned to me. What do you want, Wade? I didn't make a speech. I just said 3 things. I want the charges to stop. I want a repayment plan. And I want my business left alone. Grandpa nodded. Good. Then he slid the second folder toward me. I've reassigned the trust. It's yours, Wade. Use it for the business. It's not a fortune, but it's enough for a real lease and a second workbench. Mom's chair scraped back. You can't be serious. You're rewarding a tantrum. Grandpa didn't even look at her. I'm rewarding work. And boundaries. Dad tried to save. Maybe Wade could still contribute to the house, once things stabilize? No, I said. Calm. Clear. I'll bring groceries if needed. But I'm not funding the household anymore. That ends now. Mom pointed at me, voice shaking. You owe us. We raised you. I looked her in the eye. You raised me to be useful. I'm choosing to be respected. Bree's voice came small. So, what about me? I was counting on the collabs. I had plans. Grandpa turned to her gently. If your brand needs your brother's wallet to survive, it's not a brand. It's dependence. Bree's face flickered, hurt, anger, maybe both. Whatever. She muttered. I'll figure it out. I hope you do, I said. And I meant it. There was no dramatic ending. No hug. No dramatic gasps. I just took the folder, stood up, and walked out the front door like a man who finally realized the house behind him wasn't his responsibility to fix anymore. The next morning, I moved into the new workshop. Corner unit. Clean windows. High ceilings and concrete floors that didn't judge you for spilling paint. I hauled in my old folding table, my sealed boxes of unfinished ornaments, and the space heater that tripped the breaker if you looked at it wrong. Then I stood in the center, breathing in that particular scent, wood, lacquer, and freedom. That night, I painted until 2 a.m., not out of panic, but momentum. I didn't even notice how late it was until the Spotify playlist ran out, and silence wrapped around the shop like a warm coat. The next day, I hung a news sign on the door. Wade Works Ornaments, Custom. Honest. Mine. Then I hit publish on a single video, just hands painting tiny snow boots and a bluebird perched on a fence post. No face. No music. Just brush strokes and a soft clink of glass. It got 104 likes. One of them was Grandpa. He doesn't have an account, so that means my cousin showed him how, and he pressed that little heart on purpose. A local paper called later that week. They were doing a piece on holiday makers. They asked for a photo. I offered my hands. The reporter asked why. Because they're the ones doing the work, I said. The article ran 2 days later. Caption: Small shop, steady hands. Grandpa clipped it and put it on his fridge with a tomato magnet. He pointed to it every time I visited like it might grow larger just from pride. Mom pivoted hard. She emailed. Could you loan Bree some blanks? She wants to start her own line. No. She texted. Can your dad borrow the BMW to look at something under the hood? No. She replied. Dramatic. I replied. Okay. And that was the entire conversation. Christmas came fast. Sales boomed. I sold out of every pet ornament before the 15th. People ordered tiny versions of their houses, their dogs, even one that was just a mailbox covered in snow with the name Esther on the side. I didn't ask questions. I just painted it carefully, with a warm red flag and a tiny candy cane tucked into the slot. At the senior center, I dropped off a box of seconds, the ones with tiny smudges and crooked snowflakes. The manager cried. These are perfect to us. Jess, the high school kid I hired part-time, told me my booth setup looked like a dad shelf, and rearranged it in 20 minutes. She was right. It looked better. Straighter. I gave her a raise and a glitter-covered fist bump. Mom kept probing. Family dinner? Bring ornaments. Can Bree use the reader just once? Can we talk about contributing something this season? I answered every message with a simple phrase. Can't. Shop hours. Which was true, and also my new favorite boundary. Dad showed up one day in a quiet shuffle. Bought 2. Fisherman 1989. Ornaments and cash. Didn't make eye contact. Your grandfather's proud, he said. He says you did right. I did, I said. And I meant it. January was quiet. I finally had a shop with windows, a business account that didn't ping with surprise charges, and enough room in my head to hear my own thoughts instead of everyone else's expectations. My hands still smelled like lacquer most days, but now that scent didn't come with resentment. Mom still sends texts now and then, cheerful requests wrapped in gilt ribbon. Could you just drop off a few ornaments for Bree's next giveaway? No, I reply. No explanation. Just the word. Dad has shown up twice, both times alone. The first time, he hovered near the cash box and bought a fisherman ornament in cash. Said nothing except, your grandfather's proud. The second time, he lingered longer, watched Jess work the table, complimented my lettering. Then mumbled, she's figuring herself out, you know. Bree. I nodded but said nothing. Because whether or not Bree figures herself out isn't my job anymore. Bree came in once, no camera, no crew. Just her. She bought a tiny ornament shaped like a camera and paid full price. I wrapped it and handed it to her like I would to any customer. No hard stare. No smile either. Just neutral. She nodded once and left. No scene. It was a start. Customers started telling me their own stories as I painted. A nurse who stopped paying her brother's tickets. A woman who finally said no to watching her grandkids every weekend. A teenager who stopped sharing her car with a cousin who wrecked it twice. They all said the same thing in different ways. It felt cruel. Then it felt right. The ornaments didn't weigh much, but you could see the shift in their shoulders when they walked away. Like something heavy had finally fallen off. I made a little section in the shop called the Line Collection. Ornaments shaped like padlocks, no, in looping cursive, a tiny garage door with closed written in glitter. Bestsellers. Jess suggested we add a recharge, one, a battery icon, half full. It's not empty, she said. It's just recharging. I made 6. Sold out in a day. One evening, Grandpa came by with a newspaper clipping of that tiny article from the local journal, still fridge wrinkled and magnet dented. He handed it to me like it was the deed to a castle. I ever tell you what I wanted to be when I was a kid? He asked. Nope. A lighthouse keeper. I blinked. That tracks. He nodded. Something about standing still while the weather rages. You just stay upright. Let the beam do the talking. We didn't say much after that. Just drank coffee from paper cups and watched Jess rearrange the dog ornaments into zodiac signs. And I thought, this is what it looks like when a life becomes yours again. Not flashy. Not loud. Just steady hands. A shop that smells like pine and possibility. A grandfather who doesn't say much but means everything. And a boundary that never moved again.